stance on the TPP?
So the question for folks who didn't hear it was my stance on the TPP, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I'm still reading it. It's a big deal, and it's a big deal in a couple of respects. One, it's a big deal in that it affects, this is a, for those who haven't followed this, this is a 12-nation, proposed 12-nation trade agreement that President Obama negotiated on behalf of the United States. It's a big deal in that it affects 40% of the world economy, but it's also a big deal in that it's really long. And I am actually going through the process of reading it chapter by chapter. And I'll tell you, I would say that the things that I'm looking at in it, you know, one, I want to make sure that any discussion around global trade focuses on exporting American products, not exporting American jobs. And we're going to see later this month, probably at the end of this month, a report from something called the U.S. International Trade Commission that, that has been tasked with evaluating the impacts of this proposed agreement. Not just in the aggregate, but also to look sector by sector at what the agreement means to the American economy. I think second, one of the things I'm trying to get my head around is, if there is an economic benefit from this agreement, to whom does the benefit accrue, right? Is this something that only helps large multinational corporations, or is it something that can help small businesses here in Grace Harbor County? And I would say, generally speaking, our state does well when we sell American products to other parts of the world, whether that be Boeing airplanes, or Microsoft software, or wood products, or apples or cherries, or delicious almond roca made in Washington's 6th Congressional District. When we sell those products to other places. And yet, if you look at the history of these trade agreements, they have not always lived up to their billing in terms of economic impact. I will tell you what President Obama says about this. What President Obama says is large multinational corporations have pretty much figured out how to do global trade. And that his goal is to try to remove barriers to small businesses like those here in Grace Harbor County, so that they can sell American products made by American workers to other places. And the challenge you see is, right now, only about 5% of small businesses export. Those that do pay on average 15% more to their workers than those that don't. But right now, American small businesses, when they try to sell stuff overseas, face a whole lot of barriers. I'll give you a quick example. Nicholas and I were in Tacoma, and we met with a manufacturer in the Nowee Valley. And one of the guys at the place said, "So what do you think about this TPP?" And I said, "I don't know yet, I'm still reading." I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what." And this is a union shop, a small manufacturer. He said, "I got 3 countries that are part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that I can't even sell into." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "They have a requirement that I manufacture a certain percentage of my product in their country." He said, "I don't want to do that. I want to make stuff in America. I don't want to manufacture over there." So those markets are entirely closed to me. He said, "The other countries, my product faces between a 5 and 25% tariff." He said, "If this agreement can remove those barriers, I'll sell more stuff. I'll make more stuff. I'll employ more American workers." So that's part of the analysis that I'm trying to do, is looking at that economic impact. There's another couple issues that I'm concerned about, and I'm happy to talk about it, but I want to make sure that, I mean, the President has said that he wants to have a 21st century trade agreement that has high labor standards and high environmental standards. And I've read it. I've read those chapters, the labor chapter and the environmental chapter. The words on paper aren't bad, actually, but the question is enforcement. Is there, you know, you can set good...
There's no enforcement in it.
Well, so you can set good rules of the road. The question is, what are our safeguards to make sure there's a referee on the field who blows the whistle if somebody cheats? And that's something I'm looking at. That's part of what I have to evaluate. But, you know, bear in mind, as Mike mentioned, you know, I got into this because I grew up in Port Angeles and saw the economy crash when I was a kid. So I want to make sure that any decisions that I make are focused on trying to grow jobs and grow opportunity in the district I represent. Yeah?
I've read TPP.
Good job. You should get course credit.
It was fast,
Yeah.
and it took me a while.
Yeah.
But I'm extremely concerned about provisions which essentially exempt multinational and American corporations from both the reach of our law and our regulatory system. I would find that an almost fatal defect in its current form.
So there's a couple areas around regulation that I'm digging into as well. So one is, and I think the provision you're referring to is what's called investor-state dispute settlement, which I think I mean, when people raise concerns to me, that's one of the biggies, and it's certainly one of the things that and listen, I'm doing something that elected officials are not supposed to do, which is just giving you an honest assessment of how I'm looking at this, rather than giving you a bumper sticker answer, when I'm still trying to work through it. But so let me tell you kind of how I'm working through it. Part of what I have to wait. So, and this gets really wonky really fast, but I'll try to keep it. So this investor-state dispute settlement is basically an extrajudicial process through which someone can challenge a regulation and challenge it as being an unfair barrier to trade. And as your representative, I met with the president about this. I met with him about this trade conversation. One of the things I asked him is, so what's the deal with this investor-state dispute settlement? Why would we do that? And his response was, one of the challenges that American businesses face when they're trying to sell American products made by American workers is you have nations that have set up unfair regulations that are specifically designed to stick it to American companies selling American products made by American workers. They're creating regulations that are a discriminatory barrier to trade. I'll give you a quick example. I was meeting with a group in Tacoma, and a guy said to me, I bought, he's a retiree, he took his retirement, and he bought like a bed and breakfast in an Asian country. And he said, this is not a joke, the government came and took his property, the government of this country. And I said, what did you do? And he said, my only recourse was to sue in the court system of the government that just took my property. And he said, guess how that went? And I said, not well? And he said, not well, I lost. And so the rationale behind this, what's called investor-state dispute settlement, is particularly focused on these nations that have less sophisticated judicial systems than the United States. Now, the heartburn that I have and that you raise about this is, to me, one of the fundamental roles of government is to regulate in the public interest, to protect us, right? Whether that be for worker safety or environmental protection or consumer protection. And that is an important and legitimate role of government. And I don't want to see anything that would undermine that legitimate role of government. And so that's part of the reason I raised the issue with the president. Now, here's what he says. What he says is the United States is currently party to 50 agreements that have this investor-state dispute settlement. And the United States has never lost a single case. And the reason for that is because the United States, when it regulates, it doesn't regulate in a discriminatory manner to create barriers to trade. When you have clean air laws in the United States, they apply the same if you're an American company doing business in America or if you're a Japanese company doing business in America.
Did we just get sued, Derek, by TransCanada?
We did. And one of the challenges with this, and it's part of it's among the things I'm looking at. One of the challenges we face is they can still challenge our regulations under this model. They have not, in any situation since this has been in effect, they've never won. But they can certainly make us go through the rigmarole of having to defend our regulations. So, and again, I'm kind of walking you through this because you're my friends and you're adults, and I want you to understand what I'm looking at. But those are the issues that we have to weigh. And I wish I could stand here and say, I think this is totally black and white. I actually think it's really complicated.
It is.
Yeah.
No, I would say if it's this big, yeah,
it's really big. And part of what I'm trying to do is I've gone through, so I'm going through chapter by chapter, and I'm not just reading the chapter, I'm reading what opponents have said about the chapter, and I'm reading what the United States Trade Representative is saying about the chapter. Because, listen, this is not going to get voted on anytime soon, but I want to make sure when I cast my vote, I'm able to look at all of you in the eye, and I'm able to look at my kids in the eye and say, I was educated about the choice that I made, and I made what I thought was the best decision.